Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner. If this is your first time here, this is a series where I show y'all everything that I made my family for dinner over the past week. I try to keep my meals fairly easy and affordable, and I absolutely love being able to share that with you guys. So, first up, I made a loaded baked potato pizza, and it was incredible. I did make a homemade pizza dough, and I will have that recipe linked in my description box. This is my go-to pizza crust. I've made it so many times, and it's very easy to throw together. So after I got that spread out in my pizza pan, I'm just brushing on a thin layer of olive oil. And while I was fooling with that, I was also over on the stove frying up some bacon and boiling up some potatoes. So this was about five small to medium Yukon Gold potatoes. I did, of course, peel those first, and then I just boiled them in some salted water until fork tender. So now I'm going to doctor those up and make them extra rich and flavorful. So I did about 4 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of cream cheese, 3 to 4 tablespoons of sour cream, a splash of half and half, and just salt and pepper to taste. Now, normally when I make my mashed potatoes, I prefer to use a hand mixer to make them ultra smooth. But every now and then I'll pull out this potato masher tool and it gets the job done. It is a little on the lumpy side, but I'm not saying that's a bad thing, especially for this purpose. A little texture is great. So I just got all of that dumped out onto my pizza dough, and I'm just taking a small spatula and getting that spread out. Now, I realize if you have never had something like this before, that this is probably extremely odd to you, and I would think the same thing if I hadn't had it at a local pizza restaurant. At my last job, they used to order this pizza pretty often, and I always loved it. So that was my inspiration for making this. So the next step is going to be to add on the cheese, and this is just some sharp cheddar. This was an 8-ounce block that I shredded myself, and I say it every time, but it is cheaper and better to shred your own, so I'm really trying to get better about doing it more often. But I'm just going to pop that in a 500-degree oven, and this took about 14 minutes for that cheese to melt perfectly and it to get that golden brown color. So here I'm just taking that bacon that I fried up and crumbled, and I'm just doing my best to evenly distribute it. Now I'm just adding on some freeze-dried chives. Feel free to use the fresh ones if you want to. And then lastly, I'm just drizzling on some sour cream. That sour cream did start to melt down pretty quickly, but it tastes the same, and I still thought that it looked very appetizing. But y'all, this was a 10 out of 10. I highly recommend. It is definitely a new family favorite for sure. I just regret not making it sooner. If you've watched me for a while, you know that when I have loaded baked potatoes, I have to have A1 sauce. So I did drizzle some of that on there, and that took it over the top. And for a side, we just had some Caesar salad. Next up, I made some pizza stuffed chicken. So here I have just laid out 3 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and I'm just taking my knife and getting those sliced in half. Now, you don't want to cut all the way through. You do want to leave it connected. So you're basically just butterflying the chicken. That way you can stuff it. So I've grabbed a casserole dish. I've sprayed it with my nonstick cooking spray, and I'm just going to lay my chicken in, and I'm going to work on it in this dish. So when I opened up my seasoning cabinet, this is the seasoning that spoke to me. This is the Kinder's Buttery Steakhouse Rub, and I'm just going to generously apply that to the top, bottom, and the inside. Now, if you choose to make this, of course, feel free to use your favorite seasoning blend. It doesn't have to be this one. This was just one of those nights where I felt like grabbing one bottle versus several. But the next step, the recipe said to add some minced garlic to the inside, and I do not recommend this. We didn't really care for it. We love garlic, but this just was not it. It just kind of tasted off. This was the jarred garlic. I mean, I know that makes a difference, but I don't know. If I made it again, I would just use garlic powder, and that's my final thoughts on that. But as you can see, I'm just getting it stuffed with some pepperoni and some shredded mozzarella cheese. Now, I will say, I had to wash my hands so many times to make this meal in order to not cross-contaminate anything. My hands were literally raw by the end of this. So I recommend laying everything out before you start this recipe. But yeah, so now that those are stuffed, I'm just going to top them with some spaghetti sauce. You could also do pizza sauce if you wanted to, but I just grabbed some Prego Traditional since I already had that opened in my fridge. And you can add as little or as much as you want to. I decided to just add like just enough to cover the top of the chicken breast because like I didn't want to add a whole jar because it would have just got really watered down from the chicken cooking, and that would have just been kind of wasteful and just not our cup of tea. But lastly, I'm just topping this with some more cheese and some more pepperoni. That way they can kind of crisp up just like a pizza. So I'm going to pop this in the oven at 400 degrees. My oven took about 35 minutes to get this fully cooked, but this is what it looked like straight from the oven. I think it looks super pretty. I did top it with some like freshly chopped parsley. So the only side that I made to go along with this was some fresh corn on the cob. I was trying to make this kind of like a healthier-ish night. But as for the chicken, we did like it. It was good, but it wasn't a favorite, simply just because we're not the type of people to sit down and eat like one huge, large chicken breast. It just felt like too much chicken. That's the best way I can describe it. But I love the idea, and I'd like to play around with it. I did end up dipping it in some buffalo sauce, though, and I really liked it like that. On this day, I grabbed one of these roasted garlic and herb pork tenderloin fillets, and I turned it into some really delicious sandwiches on ciabatta bread that made for a really quick dinner. So I literally just followed the directions on the back of the package to cook this. I just slapped it on my roasting pan and threw it in the oven. It took like 30 to 35 minutes, I believe is what it was. I, of course, let it rest, and then I transferred it to my cutting board, and I'm just thinly slicing that. And cutting it this way and adding it to those like huge ciabatta rolls really made this stretch, making it for like an extremely budget-friendly dinner. As for these ciabatta rolls, I bought those at the Walmart bakery, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've had them, and I'm obsessed. I did butter them and toast them up in the pan first. Then I added a thin layer of that pork, and I'm just topping it with some shredded romaine lettuce that came out of one of those like Caesar salad kits from Walmart. I love to buy those. I'm also adding some of the shredded Parmesan cheese that it came with, as well as the Caesar dressing. So it's like a little mini Caesar salad going on top of this like garlicky pork on this delicious bread. We absolutely loved it. And like I said in the beginning, it was so quick to make, which is perfect for me this summer since we have so much going on, as I'm sure most of you guys do too. But yeah, I just served it with a side of curly fries. The next day, we went and visited my parents. So this is a dad special. He made some homemade meatloaf, green beans, macaroni and tomato, buttery mashed potatoes, and rolls, and it was so, so yummy. On the next night, we had another new family favorite. This is going to be a garlic chicken with a homemade gravy over top of some rice. So in this bowl, I have 2 chicken breasts that I've just diced up. I sprinkled on about a tablespoon of flour, and I'm just getting that seasoned with a little bit of sea salt and black pepper. I just went in on my hands to get that mixed together really good and to get everything coated. Meanwhile, I was heating up a couple tablespoons of olive oil in my skillet. Once it was nice and hot, I dropped in my chicken, and here I'm just kind of like doing my best to get it spread out in an even layer. You never want things like overlapping too much, or else it just won't cook properly and it won't develop any color, and nobody wants that. So as soon as I got it to the way that I wanted it, I let it sit untouched for about 4 to 5 minutes. That way it could develop that nice like golden brown color that I'm always looking for. And then I just went in, tossed everything up to try to get the other side the same way. I did end up switching to some tongs. That made it a lot easier. And then I just let it finish cooking. Then I went in with a couple tablespoons of butter. I did mince up a few cloves of garlic as well as some fresh parsley. And I'm just going to let that garlic cook for a couple of minutes, all while I am like tossing the chicken in that like buttery garlic and parsley mixture. I think that looks so nice and fresh. And now I'm just going to go in with my slotted spoon, and I'm going to get that removed to a separate plate. That way I can start on the gravy. So I've added in about a tablespoon of butter, a heaping tablespoon of flour, and I went in with my silicone whisk to get those two things combined and like lump free. I let that cook out for a couple of minutes, and then I just slowly whisked in 1 cup of chicken broth. This started to thicken up like pretty instantly, so as soon as it reached this consistency, I did turn off the heat. And it was done. It was as easy as that. This whole meal took no time at all to throw together, very few ingredients, all the things that I love about a recipe. But I guarantee whoever you serve this to will think that you spent a lot of time on this just because of the flavor. But here I am plating it up. I did serve it over a bed of jasmine rice. I topped it with some extra black pepper, and I served it with a side of steamed green beans. We absolutely loved this meal. Okay, so moving on to the last dinner idea for this video. I made some jalapeno popper pigs in a blanket. So you're going to start off with one of these crescent dough sheets. Mine was super mangled as soon as I pulled it out of the can. I don't know what happened, but it is just my luck to grab something like this. So I stood there like super aggravated for a minute, and I quickly got over it, got to work, and got that all sorted out. And then I took a half a block of cream cheese. I did let it sit out to room temperature, but I was still worried about it being difficult to spread, especially since I had so much problem with the dough to begin with. So I decided to pop it in the microwave for like 25 seconds to kind of like melt it, and it spread on like a dream. It worked perfectly. And I did like fully cover the surface. Then you're going to want to grab some shredded cheese. I'm going with some Colby Jack cheese since that's all I had left in my fridge. Of course, any cheese would go just fine with this. And I'm doing like a light amount. I consider this light. And next, I'm going to take some of these jalapeno peppers from the jar. You don't want any juice or anything like that, of course. I did dice those up off camera, and I'm just spreading that all over. The original recipe did call for some like bacon bits or even some like chopped real bacon, but sadly, I didn't have either. I know that would make these like over the top, but I wasn't going to stress about it. I just left it out this time, but yeah, so you can even like mix the jalapenos and shredded cheese in with the cream cheese and then spread it on. I think I'll do that next time. I think that would make it even easier and probably easier to roll here in a second. But anyways, I took my pizza cutter. I cut these into like 1-inch strips, turn it the other way, and cut it into little squares. So now it's the perfect little sections to roll up these little smokies. I grabbed the cheddar ones. I rarely ever buy these, so these were a really nice treat. But I just simply took them one by one, rolled them up, and it was as easy as that. I'm just going to repeat the process, and I'm going to slap them on a parchment-lined cookie sheet. Then I just made a quick little egg wash. It's just 1 egg with a tiny amount of water, and I am just taking my silicone brush and brushing it all over the dough. And that's going to help these brown up really nicely and like give it a glossy look. So lastly, I'm going to take my kosher salt, and I'm just going to lightly sprinkle that all over the top. That's going to go in the oven at 400 degrees for about 12 minutes, just until they're nice and golden brown like this. Y'all, these turned out so dang good. I am obsessed. I'm so glad that I finally made this recipe because now I have something new to share with my friends and family next time we get together. But that was that. I served some homemade guacamole on the side. It wasn't the best avocados, but it is what it is. And of course, we have some chips to go along with that. But that is it for this video. I really hope that it was helpful. If you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have an amazing weekend, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.